can't stare.
What were you saying?
I can't stare at that chat. It messes me up. I'm gonna.
Oh, that's totally all right. Lindsey, I'm super excited to have you back onto the podcast. This is the second time. I know that we actually recorded the podcast that we did last year. And this year, so much has happened, so much has transpired. I've been diving a lot more into a couple of different topics, and I'm really excited to share those topics with everyone today. So, Lindsey, I want to ask you first off, in the last year, being exposed a little bit more to human design, because that's going to be basically the big topic of today's episode. What have you seen happen, or what have you learned even in human design that other people can start to take away for themselves in their business?
I think the biggest thing when involved with human design in your business is being able to know like what is in alignment, which I know that that's such a cliche term, or just serving you, and what is not. And I know for me, looking back on any business that I've had, whenever I take the human design things that I've learned and I look at what I was doing, I was literally just in struggle bus, constantly just like running from things, not saying no to things that didn't serve me. And it was putting me in a tailspin in such a way that it basically put me in a place where I was repelling money, because I was running from everything that I had to do, because I was saying yes to all of these things that did not light me up. Like understanding just the basics of human design can completely transform your business and the way that you operate things, to where you're like building the business of your dreams versus wanting to run away from everything you've created.
Oh my God, I fucking love it. And I know that we've done a lot together, like with both of our human designs, to help us understand a little bit more like our own selves and our own business. So I want to get a better idea, especially because I didn't really start off the questions super, super well myself, of like, how have you been using your own human design to better understand yourself and to make certain moves and take certain steps in your own business?
So one of the biggest things for me, so I'm a manifesting generator. Fallon is a manifesting generator. And I don't know if you have any podcasts on like the basics of human design yet, but there's 5 different types. We are one of the 5 types. And one of the biggest things about manifesting generators is that you have to do what excites you and lights you up, or it will suck you dry. Like you will just be completely drained, unmotivated, all of these things. And the biggest thing that I have done is honoring like myself and my body, and knowing when things do and don't light me up. And as uncomfortable as it is, and like, oh my God, it's so uncomfortable because I'm from the South. I've grown up as, if you can't tell by my voice, but I've grown up as like just a diehard people pleaser. And I feel like almost everyone is raised that way. And so it was so hard for me to set boundaries in my business and say no to things that did not excite me, that I knew that I was going to be wanting to run from. And it has taken me years. I mean, it's a slow process if you're not willing to just dive right in and just blindly trust what you're learning. If you continue to kind of resist it, you will learn the lessons over and over. So setting boundaries as far as like saying no to things that I know I'm not going to enjoy. And then the other one, and I feel like these are like neck and neck as far as ways that I have like been able to learn about my human design and my business and stuff, is understanding that we're all built differently, and that like part of my human design says like I'm meant to forge and not follow. And so when you're looking for business plans online and like marketing techniques and all of these things, me looking at all of these like cookie cutter processes that other people are using, like I was just trying everything that everyone was putting out there. And whenever I learned that like I'm not meant to do stuff that way. Like I'm meant to create my own way and do whatever is exciting to me. And that really kind of changed the game, because instead of looking for an outside resource for a solution, I started listening to my intuition, and it just completely changed everything.
I totally love that. Listening to your intuition really does change the game. I know that like for a long time there, I was having a really hard time listening to my own intuition and like doing the things like you were saying before that light me up, because like you said, I'm also a manifesting generator, and it's really like we're just so indoctrinated, I feel like, in our culture to just like keep going and to keep doing things because it gets you a certain result, and not necessarily because it's something that you enjoy or something that makes you happy. And like, yeah, okay, everybody does have those sayings now and again that's like follow what makes you happy, but there's still this very rampant hustle culture, I feel like. And I know like this is a little slightly off of the topic that we're talking on, but I did see a post on social on Instagram yesterday, and it was this woman, and she was a very well put together woman, and she was like, I give my kids 20 minutes a day and they don't need any more than 20 minutes with me. And I'm just like, are you kidding with are you kidding me? Like that's no way to be running a business. That's no way to be creating a business. That's no way to be like having a family, because if you think about it, like you and I both have, you have a three month old, 4 month old Harper, and I have Penelope. She just turned a year recently, and like our kids need us for more than 20 minutes a day, you know? So like it really didn't sit well with me that this woman was like, oh yeah, I don't need to give my kids more than 20 minutes and the rest of the time I spend building my business. Like that's no business. That's like that's a job like that you own, that you made yourself a slave to. So um that aside, I think
Well, I think that's a great point. And I was going to just interject this really quick because, it's all relevant. And if you are being pulled to say that, then somebody obviously needs to hear this. But it's like understanding your human design and understanding the way that you operate really helps you not be like targeted by bully marketing. And
right.
I feel like the way that that lady was talking about her business and the way like I know that if something doesn't light me up, I shouldn't do it. I also know that I need to have this balance of feminine and masculine. And
Mhm.
like that's, obviously this is all going off. It's all connected. But whenever I see these posts that are like, you need to be doing this, or like you're making excuses and blah, blah, blah. I like literally in one ear and out the other. And like the middle finger goes up because I'm like, I'm not falling for your shit, because I know how I operate and I am not going to fall victim to like this bully marketing that you're doing. And so the more you get in touch with your human design, the more you can just be like, yeah, that shit's not for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like that's something I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. And that's why I think human design is so helpful, and in some or certain instances so necessary, because it helps give you insight into who you are and how you function, and like what what makes you you. And that's only going to help you when it comes to building a business and building a presence, creating influence, all of these really important things, especially not only when you're online, but especially in business, because you have a brand in a business, right? Like every business is different because it's a different brand and it's a different personality, it's a different tone. And when you understand who you are at your core, it only helps you decide like, okay, yes, this is for me. Okay, no, it's not for me. And I think another thing that like just after working with you and like going through this way deeper over, I don't even remember how long it's been now. Like I am starting to really come into my own, I feel like, and just not even in terms of just like my intuition, but like even coming into my own of being like, okay, if I have a decision about what I want to invest in or who I want to be working with or who I want to be associated with, like I look at me like I turn to my human design and I kind of make the decision of like, okay, is this going to be a good decision or not? Because maybe, you know, I know back in 2021 I said this is kind of recently, although now it's starting to get to be, like 2 years ago now. I said that, I wanted to do things in person, and I started to make the switch from being online to going in person. And I know that when I made that switch, I started to see a lot of progress because I felt this intuitive nudge. And I was like, this feels right for me. And I know that that was what lit me up at the time, and I'm actually finding myself kind of going back into the same kind of move again where I'm like, okay, like I feel like I'm forcing things when it comes to online and like being online. And maybe what I do is I just take a step back and I just do the things that light me up and that I enjoy, because that's how I best am, how my machine best functions, understanding my human design, and just do the things that I like and then just see where it goes, you know? Like I if I'm forcing something, then I'm not living in my design and I'm not living into my intuition. And I think that it's really important to really tune into those things. And I think that there are other way more detailed aspects of human design that I would really like to get into, not just in this episode, maybe even into, further episodes, but understanding your gates and your channels and your energy centers, I think is also really, really huge. So I'm going to ask you if you want to just quickly go over, maybe some of the energy centers that you have defined, or that, I know that you've seen my chart before that I have defined, so that other people can start to get an idea of like what the energy centers are, what do they kind of correlate with, why these energy centers might be something they want to pay attention to. I think that would be a really great thing to kind of go over so that they have good insight into, like, okay, if I have a defined, solar plexus, I'm going to be feeling through all these emotions, and I want to feel through those things before I make some decisions. So why don't we start there and then see where, where it might take us.
Okay, so in human design, you have chakras, and they're different from the chakras that, we traditionally see. Like for meditation, you have like two extra ones. And
Hmm.
so in human design, it's either defined or undefined. And so if it's defined, it's solid whenever you go to look at your graph, which, by the way, you can go to mybodygraph.com, look up your human design for free. You need your birthday, your birth time, and your birth city. And if you don't know the birth time, you can just kind of guess and do it like hour by hour and see which one makes the most sense to you, or ask a family member if you're born in the morning or afternoon or whatever. It varies some, but it's not like crazy different.
Hmm.
So they're either defined or undefined. So if you have a defined center, which means it's solid, then you have an unlimited energy source in that center. And so you basically have like a stable way of being in those centers. If you have open centers, then, and I had this epiphany a while back as far as explaining it, and I love this explanation. If you have open centers, you can feel other people's energy in those centers. And so a lot of times it can kind of cloud your thoughts, emotions, time, all of these things, because you're feeling other people's energy. And so the way to think of your open centers is kind of like clear quartz, if you're into crystals. It's an
Hmm.
amplifier. So anything that you feel, you pull it in and then you amplify it back out. And so sometimes other people's energy can kind of cloud those centers for you and cause you to either think thoughts or feel feelings or whatever it is that's not really yours. And so when you understand that, it can really kind of help you through the emotional ups and downs of all of these things, to be like, hold on, that's not even mine. So to give you a quick rundown, so there is the crown, which is your thinking. Okay, so if you have a solid one, you're just like ideas, ideas, ideas. If it's open, then you're more open-minded, and you also are like inspired by things. If you have an open ajna, which is like kind of like your third eye, then you tend to have this, and human design defines it as like not self feelings. Okay, and that's to let you know that these feelings are not yours because it's open. Okay, and so someone with an open ajna has a need to feel sure. And so sometimes you may find that you like are trying to convince other people, but really you're trying to convince yourself. Or you're really just trying to like verbally walk through everything. If it's solid, then you're like, you're sure. You don't, you feel secure, you feel sure, you're not even worried about it. The
Hmm.
next is your throat. And in your throat, it's either everything's solid or defined. I won't keep saying that. So someone with a solid throat is going to have no trouble like speaking, feeling good about their words or whatever. And it depends also which motors your throat is connected to. Someone with an open throat might feel pressured to always have the words for something. And that's not yours. You speak when you're ready, and when you say it, it's concise, but you don't have to always like force it. And so for someone who has an open throat, like to feel like, oh, I have to show up every day live online and talk, like that is not for you. Someone with a defined throat, Fallon and I both have a defined throat. We can just talk all day.
That's why we have podcasts.
Right. And so then the next one is your G center. It's also called your identity. And that one, if it's solid, like you know who you are, you will always be who you are. If you have a business, it's good to have a brand that is like you're the brand, which that, you know, that's kind of been a new trend in marketing, is like you're the brand, right? If you have an open G center, that's a horrible business design for you, because you aren't associated with a specific identity, and your identity will change throughout your life. So if everyone's like, you know, if you have an open center and everyone's like, it's like you're having a midlife crisis every 2 years and completely changing your identity. And one day you're grunge, and one day you're a hippie, and one day you're a conspiracy theorist, and one day you're this, that's fine. You're going to move through life, and it's going to ebb and flow and change, and you don't have to be one identity. However, take note that whoever you surround yourself with will kind of amplify that. So you kind of tend to be a chameleon. And so it's very important to pay attention to the people that are surrounding you with all of these centers, because you're always going to be amplifying what you're taking in. So if you're surrounded by tons of negativity, you're just going to be amplifying that. Versus if you're in a really calm, peaceful, accepting environment, you're going to be amplifying that peace. So that's an important note on all of them. So then, I'm not sure why I'm so winded. I'm good at talking. I mean, I am kind of swaying my baby. I'm also excited. Okay, so then after your G center is your sacral, okay? And underneath your sacral, so the thing that makes generators and manifesting generators is that we have a defined sacral, and our sacral is our generator, and that's why we have this unlimited energy, but only for things that light us up, okay? So someone with a sacral will they want to listen to the cues in their body to know if they want to do something or don't want to do something. So it's either a hell yes or a hell no, and you'll feel it. And then depending on other elements of your profile, like I'm a manifesting generator, but I'm just a pure manifesting generator. I'm not an emotional manifesting generator. So whatever my body tells me in the moment is what I should respond to, or even sleeping over it overnight. Where Fallon, she's an emotional manifesting generator, which means she has her solar plexus solid, which we'll go over next or in a few. She has to wait until she's in a neutral emotion, like not a super high, not a super low, but calm and has clarity and like good emotional stability around the decision. And, you know, we figured out her cycle is like 2 weeks on that cycle. So she has to do that for her response. Okay. If you have an open one, what can happen is you're not going to get that visceral response of yes or no. So yes or no questions work for the majority of the population, because manifesting generators and generators are, you know, 67%. But for people who have an open sacral, that's not going to be the case. And another thing about people with an open sacral, and this is like another element, and I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but people with an open sacral, they don't have sustained energy to just do. So where like the manifesting generators and the generators are like the workers of the world, and they have the sustained energy if they're excited, everyone who doesn't is like, you're not meant to be a worker bee. Like you will have spurts of work and then you have spurts of rest. It's normal for you to need to take naps. It's normal for people to have called you lazy your whole life, like all of these things. And it's kind of like the whole, and I'm going to stay focused. I'm not going to get distracted. But like one of the biggest lessons whenever I learned that I was a manifesting generator was like, you dabble in all these things, and it's normal for you to have a million projects and to not finish them. And so my whole life, the patriarchy has told me, find one thing and stick to it. And it was like, that goes against my design 100%. And so I was over here just like resisting. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
People with an open sacral, they're going to work in these cycles. And so like, it's one of those things where if people have been calling you lazy or like a sloth your whole life, it's not that you're lazy. It's that you don't have the sustained energy to keep up with these people who are just working circles. And when you learn that, you can quit pushing yourself to the stage of burnout, and you can start adding in rest the way that you should, so that you can like be optimal. Like people who have an open sacral, they learn to be incredibly efficient, because you know, I'm going to have these bursts of energy, and that's when I get shit done. And when I'm tired, I rest, and I'll get the same amount done as the people who are working circles, because I do it in bursts. You learn that about yourself. Okay, so sorry, the sacral is very important. Okay, so then the root. Okay, so we're just going all the way down. The root is like where your tailbone is. And the root, if you have a solid root, then you have lots of security around money and time, and you can relax. Like you can be in the moment and know that like everything is fine and you'll pick it back up. People who have an open root or undefined root will feel this constant pressure. And because this is a pressure center, the head and the root are pressure centers. And so the people with a defined root will feel this constant pressure. And it's like, I can't relax until everything is done. Everything has to be checked off of my list. Well, if you're a mom, knowing this is incredibly helpful, because your list is 3 pages long. Your list never ends. It never
Yeah,
ends.
and there's always something to be added to the list.
Yeah, and you can never cross it off. And so, and that's kind of like where the whole Abraham Hicks thing was so helpful for me. Like, these are the things I'm going to take care of, and these are the things I'm going to give to the universe, because your list is never done. And so you struggle to relax in the moments, knowing that you have all these other things that need to be done. Okay. So then moving on, the spleen is either like solid or open. God, I don't know why I keep saying that. I'm sorry. But this is related to time and intuition. And people who have a solid spleen, they just know. They have an instant knowing. The people who are like, I can walk in the room and get a bad vibe. I can, walk in here and be like, no, this isn't for me. Or like, yes, this is the one. Those are the solid spleen people. My husband has a solid spleen. Fallon, you have a solid spleen, correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And actually my Jupiter's in my spleen, and my like pearl is the same placement as your Jupiter, like in Gene Keys, and it's in my spleen. It's gate 57.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it's amazing to be around the people with a solid spleen, because you're just like, I don't know, how do you feel about this? How do you like, and my husband has it. And I've told this story before, but like when we went to go house shopping, like to buy our first investment property, we had to go to another town. And he was like, well, maybe you can just go without me. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to another town to pick out a house without you. Like, you got the solid spleen. I need you to know. And so I knew this, and my realtor thought we were freaking crazy, because I was like, Kurt has a solid spleen and he likes his house, we're getting it. And so house, and he was like, I love this house. I want this house. He obsessed over it. And it's a really incredible story, because there was like all this back and forth with the offer. And I told the realtor, like, if it's meant to be for us, we'll get it. Like, no, we're not going to offer anymore. And we freaking got it after like 3 times of back and forth. And I was like, Kurt had a good feeling about that house. We got it. And it was like, it was like, there was no back and forth. And I went in knowing that, and I have an open spleen. So I'm like, I got to trust his intuition, because I am like, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Oh, we'll fix it up. Like, no, you need a solid spleen person when you're house shopping. There's a lot more to it. It's really good for that. And people who have an open spleen, if they push themselves too hard, their health will start to decline, and that can like be an indicator of you, like you're getting sick all the time, stuff like that, because it's also related to your health. Okay, so then on the other side, you have something that's called the heart or the ego. And that is your sense of self-worth. So if you have a solid heart or ego center, then you don't need someone else to tell you that you're worthy. If you have it open, you're like, am I good enough? Is this good enough? Did you like that? How was dinner? Did it taste good? Are you sure? Did it need more salt? Like, that is the open ego person. And then the emotional solar plexus, which I feel like is like the second most important besides the sacral, is if it's solid in you, then you have like this emotional wave. And so it will come on strong, and it has peaks and valleys, and it will always be up and down and somewhere in the middle. And so it's important for you, if you have an emotional solar plexus, to be mindful of that, and to know that, like, if you're like having this emotional low or having this extreme high, to know that it does these peaks and valleys, and that sometimes when you're feeling low, it's not like you're not depressed, like you don't need to end it, like any of those things. You just got to learn to ride the wave. And then for the people with the emotional solar plexus that's solid, it affects their decision making. For people who have an open emotional solar plexus, which is everyone in our house except for Harper, you feel other people's emotions and you amplify them back. And so, if you're living in a house with someone who has a solid emotional solar plexus and you don't, you can kind of feel like there's a little bit of whiplash, because you're like, oh, we're crazy today. I'm just kidding. But like, oh, it's going to be like that today. Like, we're having a rough day. And so then everybody's amplifying it back. And one of the best ways to know this is, like, if you have someone who's like, oh, if they're in a bad mood, everybody's in a bad mood. That person probably has an emotional solar plexus solid. And it's funny because I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and her and her son have a solid emotional solar plexus, and everybody else has an open one. And she was actually, before I looked at their chart, she was like, yeah, it's like if he's in a bad mood, like everybody's in a bad mood and it's up and down and all over the place. And like, I looked it up, and sure enough, I'm like, oh, he has a solid emotional solar plexus. So it's not one of these things that when you're reading your chart, you don't want to be like, it's black and white and like I have to live by this. But it's like, these are these tools that you can use to understand yourself more, and then you just kind of take what makes sense to you and what works and just use it in the best way that you can, to like life hack. Like, it doesn't have to be the gospel for you. It can just shed some light on the way that you are.
Yeah,
And how
I totally agree with that. And I love that you started out talking about the open centers versus the defined centers, because like through all these 9 centers, if they're open or defined, you have consistent access to this energy if it's defined. And then, like you said, you amplify other people's energy if it's open or undefined. And I mean, I actually just thought of something while you were talking about the emotional solar plexus there, because I have a solid solar plexus, Tommy has a solid solar plexus, and Penelope has a solid solar plexus. So, like, we're all very emotional, the 3 of us. And it almost makes me wonder if, like, people who have the open solar plexus are like, whoa, this is whiplash. Like, if all 3 of us have the defined solar plexus, it's like we're all on different emotional points, and then it can be whiplash within the house because each, like, of the 3 of us are experiencing a different emotion throughout the day or the week or whatever. And like that can be whiplash in and of itself, because like you said, like you have to go through these emotional waves and like ride them out. And like some are small, like some cycles are smaller than others. So I wonder if that's a thing though too. Even if, you know, you have a defined center, you could still cause whiplash to other defined centers around you because you are in such an emotional state, and maybe they're in a similar but opposing emotional state, you know?
I also wonder if you can sync your cycles, your emotional solar plexus cycles, which I know I talk about cycles a lot in my program, but God, they're so helpful to understand. But I'm curious if like emotional solar plexus cycles can sync. But
Hmm.
also, I was just going to say, like, to anyone who does have an emotional solar plexus that's solid, one of the best things, like one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you is to track your emotions, just like you would like a period tracker or something like that. And I actually have a section for that in my gratitude journal, where it's like, how am I feeling today? And then like the moon cycle and my feminine cycle. But if you track that, like, which Fallon has tracked hers, and it's helped her with her decision making, because if you track it, you can know if other people in your household, because this is human design. I know that we're talking about business, but dear God, it's so helpful in your relationships and in your
Oh my
family and
God.
like raising children. It's
Yeah.
insane. Um,
Yeah.
But I highly recommend tracking it because number one, you know when is a good time for you to make decisions. But number two, it can kind of help you have a calmer approach whenever you're dealing with someone with one. Like, so for example, with Harper, like not only, does she have that, but like I have that like Leap Weeks app where it's like I know she's on a leap week. And it's like if I know she's on a leap week, I'm just like, oh, it's fine. She's cranky. We'll get out of this. Like this is just a tiny little stint and then she'll be fine again. Versus you thinking like, oh my God, what's wrong with my kid? They're broken. Like I had this perfect kid and now they're crazy. And what do I do? And it's like it's kind of the same thing with that. You're like, hey, like they're just on a low in their emotional wave. And so instead of you taking it personal, because that's what we do, when you understand that like people are amplifying you back to you, or like they're on this emotional wave, it can really help you not take things personal so much because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, that they're just having an emotional low. And like, you know what, maybe we should just go get ice cream for dinner. Like that
Hell
might fix
yeah.
it, instead of like feeling you're being attacked or whatever it is. It's so helpful to know that and to understand it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's nothing wrong with ice cream for dinner. I literally made that suggestion the other day. We didn't go do it, but um it's been like hot as balls over here, and it's humid as balls when it's hot as balls. And so I was like, oh, we should go get ice cream for dinner. But we didn't. It's okay. That aside, you can tell that this is a conversation between two manifesting generators because literally it's kind of ADD. So, one other thing that I want to kind of dive into, because I know we were talking about manifesting generators, and we were also, you brought up the fact that when you have a sacral defined, that means you're a generator or a manifesting generator. One other thing that I want to dive into would be the energy types. So, manifesting generators, what makes a generator versus a manifesting generator? What are the other profiles out there? And like, what makes them like who they are per se, like manifester versus projector versus reflector?
Totally. Okay. So I know, and I feel like we totally should have covered this first because if you're listening and you don't know what your human design is, you probably want to choke both of us because we're just like,
Yeah.
oh, we're manifesting. It's 1 in 5. We won't tell you the others. Sorry. Okay, but hopefully you're still here because you want to know. Okay, um, so there's 5 different types. So there's a manifester, and manifestors have an open sacral. They can have, and Harper's a perfect example. She has an open sacral. Everything else is solid. Like,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? I was able to pick her human design, by the way. It makes me feel slightly psycho, but it's okay because I scheduled my C-section. And so I went through the available days and was like, do I want her to be a manifestor? Do I want her to be a projector? Do I want her to be this? Do I want her to be that? So kind of cool. But anyway, which really she probably picked it. She guided me, but still. So manifestors have an open sacral, which means they don't give that visceral response, yes or no, but manifestors speak things into existence. So they're the ones who are just like, hey, you know what? I think it'd be a really good idea if we did this. And then they don't necessarily have to take those things and execute them. And when everybody works in harmony in their design, then this is how the world runs. Okay. So the manifestor says, oh, I think this is a great idea. And then usually a generator or a manifesting generator will be like, man, that is an awesome idea. Like, can I have that project? And you're like, yeah, go ahead. That's how, we work together. Okay. But with manifestors, they have an open sacral and it's very important, and they have a defined throat. So it's very important for them to inform people and say things out loud, because whenever they do, it makes other people feel at ease. And one of the problems you can run into with manifestors, because they get an idea and they run with it. Like their response is, do I want to do this? Hell yeah. And then they get an idea and they can do it. Okay. But only if they're well rested. But the problem with manifestors is a lot of times people will be intimidated by them because they'll just get an idea and then they'll just fucking do it and they won't tell anybody. And everybody's like, whoa, 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 like what's going on? And so everybody else likes to be informed. And so it's good for manifestors to say what they're going to do. It's not asking permission, but it's important for you to inform other people so they don't feel left out and left behind and like just like in shock. Okay. So and there's other things like the way they sleep and all of that, but I don't want to go too in depth because it's a lot of information to take on at once. Okay, so then the manifesting generators, they have a solid sacral and they have a solid throat. And so that's why they're manifesting generators, because they're supposed to inform as well. But they have that sacral. And so they get excited or they're like cringe. And that's how you like make your decision. So manifesting generators, if they're doing something that lights them up, they have sustained energy for it. But like I was saying earlier, they have, it's normal for them to have a ton of projects. It's normal for them to not finish all those projects. It's also normal for them to skip steps. Sometimes they'll have to go back and correct, but they literally will just like skip stuff and like, boop, I'm going to do it this way. And, you know, learn a new way to do it. Okay. So then generators, they have the solid sacral, but they have the open throat generally. And so, not generally, they have the open throat. And so they are there to, they respond viscerally to yes or no, same things. They need to follow their body and they have unlimited energy for the things that excite them. But they're not like they don't have that informing part. Okay. And I will say, like, a lot of people get really confused on the manifesting generator and they're like, well, can I manifest? Can I just speak things into existence? Technically, anyone really can, because it's all about just responding to stuff. Like, so you can literally just respond to yourself. You can respond to stuff that you see online. Like, that is responding. Like when your body's like awesome or not awesome, like that's a response. Okay. So, with the generators, they are there to respond, not inform, right? And manifesting generators, we inform and respond, okay? And they've got that unlimited energy. So then moving on, you have the projector, and the projector has an open sacral, and they are like the project managers. They're really good at overseeing things and giving their opinion, and like giving their expertise in things. Okay. Oh, I should have mentioned the not self theme, but that's okay. With projectors, they're there to just kind of oversee stuff. Like we said, they don't have that sustained energy. And they're just really kind of good at letting people know, like, hey, I see how you guys are working and this is going great, or like, you should do this. And so they really do good in those type of roles. They're not good in like a 9-to-5, working a heavy physical labor job, stuff like that. Like they will burn out and burn out and burn out and like get sick. And then like you'll have to sleep for 3 days and all of this stuff. So they're meant to just work in those bursts when they have it. Same thing with manifestors, they're just, you work in a burst when you have the energy, and then you rest when you don't. So it's common for projectors and reflectors and manifestors to like, you need lots of naps and rest time and stuff like that. The last one is the reflector, and the reflector is only like 1% of the population. Not a lot of people are reflectors, and they have every single center open. So they're just like a walking amplifier of like their surroundings. And so one of the most interesting things about reflectors, besides the fact that they're 1%, is that their like response is they're supposed to wait an entire moon cycle to make a serious decision. Okay. And so they're there to like just like amplify and like just inform everybody what's going on by observing them. Like if everything's not going well, they'll be the first to get sick. They're just there to like just show, and it doesn't mean that you don't have an identity, that you're just a mirror in a room, but when they're like making their decisions and stuff, it's good for them to like talk it out and then listen to what they are saying, not take everyone else's advice, but listen to themselves, and just kind of that lets you know what you're reflecting. So super interesting. And I think I forgot to mention, sorry, I'm all over the place, I don't have a script or anything, this is all just
It's totally all right, Lindsey.
But I forgot to mention, like with the projectors, they're supposed to wait for an invitation. And I think that this is one of the biggest hangups that people who are projectors have, is like, you're supposed to wait for an invitation. And all that means is that you basically need to be seen and heard and acknowledged in order to like engage in something. And it's not for every single thing. It's not like somebody's going to on a vacation or to the store and you're not allowed to invite yourself. They have to invite you. It's not that. It's only for big milestones like life, career, love, family, things like that. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be invited multiple times. Okay. But it's like, they have to wait for the invitation, because if they basically interject themselves and people aren't like, hey, you're really good at like seeing what's going on and like calling it like you see it. If someone doesn't say like, hey, you're really good at this, and then they interject themselves, then basically like their opinion becomes like kind of forced. And then they feel bitter because they don't feel appreciated in what they're doing. And so the biggest thing is like to make sure that your opinion is wanted when you're giving it, and not like giving these unsolicited advice and opinions, because it will end up leaving you feeling bitter, because you in your mind you're like, I have the expertise, and then when you give it to them they're like, I don't want to hear that shit. And so then you're like, man, I'm giving them good information and they're not listening, and so you end up bitter. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things about projectors. That's like the hang up of like, waiting for the invitation. And, with generators, it's like, I got to respond or wait to respond and all these things. And so it's not, like I said, it's not like you one way or the other, but just kind of like learning to follow that so that you can do things in more flow.
Yeah, I definitely see. I mean, especially, I feel like it's so rampant on social media because everybody kind of wants to know what their type is and how they can best live according to their authority. And I see that that's a huge thing when it comes to projectors. Like, oh, well, if my authority is to wait for the invitation, then like, how long do I have to wait? Like, I see so many different posts and like stories about that. And it's like you said, it's not necessarily like for, little things. It's more for these like bigger, more, I don't want to say important, because it's not that the little things aren't important, but it's like these like life-changing kind of, topics of being in relationships, or what you're going to do in your career or in your business, or, like more of those bigger topics. But I want to tell you, because I did this the other day. I ran all of my family's human designs and because I was like bored and I had nothing to do. And I actually found out that my grandfather is a reflector. So yeah, I know one of the 1%ers. And I was like, wow, this is really insane. Like I didn't think that I knew a reflector in my life, but
I know too. Can you believe
you know
that?
too?
Yeah, my bestie, her daughter is a reflector. And like
Wow.
literally, if I was part of her family, I would complete her family, because she's a generator, husband's a projector, son is a manifester, daughter is a reflector. I'm like,
Wow.
I'm a manifesting generator and I'm your best friend. I can complete your family. But her
Yeah.
daughter is a reflector. And then I have another friend that I actually met on TikTok, and she's a reflector. And
That's crazy.
so it's so interesting. And I think one of the biggest things about reflectors and anyone else who has that open identity is, it's especially with your children, it's very important that you pay attention to who you're allowing them to surround themselves with. Because if they get in with the wrong crowd, it can just be detrimental. So it's like, you really do kind of have to be selective with their friends and stuff, because you don't want them to assume the wrong identity. And then like all of a sudden, you've lost your kid kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very important. Your environment is so important if you're a reflector, like
That's
so
so
important.
that's so nuts. I feel like reflectors are like these spotted unicorns in the world. Like you only ever hear about, reflectors being the 1%, and you're lucky if you get to meet one, right? And I'm like, oh my God, there's been a reflector in my life this whole time. It's been like, it was
So
pretty
cool.
mind-blowing when I figured that out. But all right. So I definitely think this is gonna have to be a two-parter, because you mentioned the not self theme, and obviously there's like so much more. There's the not self theme, there's, your definition, there's your
Your
authority that
profile.
we kind of, yeah, your profile, your gates. We kind of mentioned gene keys and authority. It might even have to be a three-parter, but I think for right now, like, we definitely covered a lot in this first episode. And I just want to ask you, based on like what we've covered so far between the energy types and also between the centers, like, do you have, I mean, obviously, for open people, they amplify what's around them. If you're a reflector, like pay attention to your environment. Do you have any like last parting thoughts here based on energy types or based on, the centers being opened or defined, that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest piece of advice is honestly, like, if you know your type and knowing how to respond, that is the most important. Like, if you don't know jack about human design, like this is all you know from this podcast, and like, dear God, I was all over the place, so I apologize if this is all you know and this is all you got. But if you know how to respond, that will help you kind of get in the place of listening to your intuition and just kind of quitting the resistance, so that you can like start living your life in flow and by design, versus like feeling like you're forcing everything. And so I'll give you like a quick, like, if you're a manifester, if it feels good and you have the energy, do it. If you're a generator, and I was being PC, but in my opinion, it's either a fuck yes or a fuck no. So if you're a generator, if you get really excited and you're just like chills, like, yes, I want to do this, then do it. And if it's like a nope, don't sign me up for cardio, like if it's that for you, then it's a no. But just remember that you also want to pay attention to yourself, because this is something that I've been guilty of like my entire career, is like, in the moment something sounds really exciting and I'm like, oh my God, that is so fun. But then I don't think about whether it's all the projects that I have going on, or when I'm going to get to it, or how I'm going to feel when I do it. And so I had to start learning to not say yes to everything, because I was like, wait a minute, the last time I did that, it was a fucking shit show. I should say no to that because it stressed me out. And so I had to learn. So learning that, when you can say yes or no to things, and like really, and if you're not sure, you can be like, let me sleep on it. That's fine. Like, you don't have to give people an answer right away. If you're a projector, the biggest thing is just making sure that you're always like, if you're waiting for the invitation, the best thing for you to do is to really just be like diving into the things that you're super interested in. And I like to call it like sowing your crop. So like, if you really want a job in like construction management, like spend your time like doing everything you can to get ready as if whatever it is that you want is coming for you. Like, well, I'm going to get this job in construction management, so I need to like take this class and do this, and I need to buy this, and I need to like act as if it is coming, and just like continue to get ready until that invitation comes, because you're going to have that confidence when someone says, hey, I noticed you're really good at this, to be like, yeah, I am. Would you like my help? And so you're just getting ready, and you're knowing that what it is that you're wanting and you're like really engrossed in is coming to you, and just like doing all your preparation and resting when you need rest. And then like for the reflectors, I think one of the best things that you can do is have a really good, I mean, for everyone, but for the reflectors especially, is like observation. How do people make you feel? How do I act when I'm around these people? How is my health? Like, what happens when I do this? And then just really kind of observing the way you feel emotionally, physically, pressure, all of those things around certain people, and follow those feel good feelings. When you feel good somewhere or you feel good around people, do more of that.
Yeah, I totally love it. Lindsey, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I think we're going to have to maybe, so long as it's okay and it feels like a fuck yes for you, I think we're going to have to maybe, because I don't think it was just you, it was also me too. We were both kind of, really tried and true Manny Gens all over the place, like fucking word vomit, fucking question vomit, right? But I think we're definitely, especially knowing that there are other things to still cover, gonna have to schedule a two-parter, so long as it's a fuck yes for you.
Yeah, it's a fuck yes. I can't ever shut up about this stuff, and my husband's tired of hearing about it. So y'all listen. Listen to me.
That's so funny. All right, cool beans. Lindsey, thank you again for coming on. Harper, thank you for coming on as well. She has been a dream, by the way, just saying.
Totally
Just so that our listeners know, you do not need to like have your kids be like babysat or anything. Like Harper's been on this podcast the entire time, and I don't think Lindsay pressed mute once. Like
I
she
did
has been awesome.
once briefly, but it was short. But yeah, but I mean, I did bribe my other kid to behave. And he's in the living room waiting, and he did good. He did good. But
Yeah, he did do really awesome.
he's like the interrupting cow, though. If you don't, then we wouldn't get anywhere.
Yeah, well, maybe that terrarium's on its way to his vicinity. um, in any case, thanks for popping on. Well, if you are listening, stay tuned for the upcoming parts because, like Lindsay said, there's just so much other, content to cover on this, and there's so many other, downloads that both of us have been receiving around this topic in terms of like how to get to know ourselves better and to run our businesses better and using the energy of certain gates and certain channels to our advantage. So definitely stay tuned. And until then, we will talk to you soon.
Bye.